Hi, Sean.
Your take on the meeting? What'd you think?
I thought it was a great meeting. We discussed a lot of things, a lot of very important things, and I thought it was really a very, very good meeting. I think Paul felt the same way, and everybody else did also.
Yeah, maybe that's just me. There's a part of me that thinks, I understand it, people saying, you're the nominee, you have the job to unite the party, but doesn't he, as the Speaker of the House, also have that job?
Well, I think he does, and I think he's doing a good job. He's got not an easy job, and I don't mind going through a little bit of a slow process. It's a very big subject. I mean, we have a lot of things, and I think for the most part we agree on a lot of different items, and we're getting there. I feel very strongly about border security. I feel very strongly about trade. I feel very strongly about building up the military, and, to a large extent, I think Paul is there also. So yeah, we'll get there. I'm pretty sure.
But I've interviewed you a lot in this process. You say you want conservative justices to the Supreme Court. You said you'll even give us a pool of names before the election, right?
Right, I'm going to do that, yes.
Right. All right, so you're going to build a wall. That's conservative. Conservative justices obviously are. You've said to me repeatedly you want to get our budget back in balance, that you will repeal and replace Obamacare, right, likely with health care savings accounts?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Common Core, we're going to get rid of Common Core, bring education locally. We're going to do that. We're going to protect our Second Amendment, so important, so important. And, the Second Amendment is being chipped away at. And as far as Hillary's concerned, she wants to abolish the Second Amendment. I really believe she wants to abolish the Second Amendment. Her whole view on guns she's a disaster in so many different ways. So I think we really had a great meeting today, and I think we agree on a lot of things, and it'll be a little process, but it'll come along, pretty sure.
And then you want to be energy independent. You said you want to take care of vets. Right. You want to build up the military. Maybe it's me, and maybe I'm a little cynical here. What does he want to know? Why is this so hard for him to say, yeah, I agree with him on all of those issues right there, and Hillary Clinton is on the other side? I don't understand why that's so hard.
Well, I think a big thing today was the judges, the justices, Supreme Court, and I think that they felt very good about it. I had this idea a couple of months ago because I was getting a little bit of pushback from some great people and some great friends of mine that are in Congress, and they were telling me that, how can we feel a little bit better? And I came up with this idea that I would come up with a list of really, really terrific, acceptable judges, conservative, and I'll put that list forward, and that'll be a list from which I'll choose, or at least a list, at a minimum, a list from which I'll sort of use as a guide. And I'll tell you, that went a long way. People really like that idea a lot.
I think a lot of people do, and I've even heard people talk about maybe even naming some cabinet positions. I mean, you've got a team of people. You got Ben Carson working for you now. Chris Christie's working for you now. Would you maybe name some of those people along with Vice President before the election?
I do think so. I think before the election, I'd name some, and I think they'd be really great. We have some great names. You just mentioned two of them, but we have some other great names, and they want to be involved. They would love to be involved. And, I get a kick, all of these people that are saying they really don't want to be understood. They don't want to be for the vice president position, but none of those people were asked. I mean, it's like one of those things, they're all turning me down, but they were never asked. And I guess they turned me down because they know they're not going to be asked. But we have some incredible people for vice president that I think you'll be very impressed with, and I'll do that announcement probably during the convention in Cleveland.
Let's talk. There was a report this week. You narrowed it down to 5 or 6 people. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that's true. That's true.
Okay. And you're going to give me an exclusive news-breaking hint right here. Anything you can tell us about that?
Well, I can tell you you'll like most of them. I'm not sure about all of them, but you'll like most of them. But I think the end result is you'll like the final pick, which is the only one that counts. And we're going to have some interesting days and nights ahead because it's really tough. I mean, it's a tough decision. You have some that are really, really strong in some areas. We want to get somebody that's really good in all areas. And I think we have a few that are really excellent and that people are going to like and really respect as people.
Let's talk about some issues came up this week about, in the last week and a half, some ambiguity on issues of minimum wage, raising taxes, whether or not you were softening your stance about bringing refugees into the country. So let's clarify minimum wage.
Okay, well, let me just tell you, the only thing I am talking about a little bit is I like the idea of the states looking at minimum wage because if they don't, New York is totally different than if you go to Alabama, Arkansas, so many places that I love. They voted for me. I love them all. But you're talking about a whole different, cost of living. So what's good for New York is not necessarily good for someplace else. New York is very expensive to live in, and I could see having more in New York and less in other places, and yet your standard of living might be better in Alabama or, as I said, Arkansas and other places than it would be in New York, even though New York would have a higher minimum wage. So I really like giving it to states to determine. Plus, they have to compete with each other among, other things, but they have to compete with each other. So I like the concept of giving it to states. And in some states where it's more expensive, maybe they do have to lift the minimum wage. And in others, they won't have to do it. And those people live very well. So that's the way it is. Now, they also have to compete with each other in business. So I really like the idea because it's so different. It's a big country. It's so different. And the cost of living is so different. I like letting the states set the minimum wage.
How about tax increases? I saw that you had said, well, maybe we'll raise taxes on the wealthy. You clarified it on Twitter.
I didn't clarify, John. Look, these people on minimum wage, number one, I said about states, and I think it's very clear, and I think it's a good idea. And I've been universally praised for that. As far as taxes are concerned, all I said is when I put in taxes, it's really a proposal. It's not a policy. It's not anything. It's a proposal. So you put in taxes because you're going to have to negotiate with Congress. You're going to have to negotiate with senators, and you're going to have to negotiate with Congress people. And it's going to be a tough negotiation. I'm going to possibly have to lift it from my proposal, but that proposal, and even when lifted, will be a lot cheaper than it is right now. As you know, Larry Kudlow is in love with my plan, and Larry Kudlow is a fantastic guy. And Larry Kudlow, he likes my plan the best. But my plan is the biggest cut of anybody. I have the biggest tax cut of anyone. But remember, when I put in the proposal and proposed rates and everything else, it's going to be negotiated. You're not going to put in and everyone's going to say, oh, that's wonderful, I'm going to leave it right there. So I expect, now I will tell you, we're taking care of big league of the middle class. We're taking care of business. Our business taxes are being reduced by by a tremendous sum. And I will say, perhaps from my low proposal, perhaps the wealthy will go a little bit up from that standpoint. But that's all I was saying. They're not going up. So that's not a clarification. That's just all you have to do is read it. And I'll tell you who covered it well. Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal had a front page article, covered what I said so well, because the Wall Street Journal writer really got it. He understood it. It was covered so perfectly.
Well, listen, when you really look at the latest numbers that have come out. This is the scary part. And I asked you a lot when we were on the road together. I'd ask you almost every interview. I mean, you have 1 in 5 families that don't have a single family member in the workforce. Look at young people today. Young men, 18 to 34. This is staggering. 1 in 6 are either incarcerated or don't have a job. Now, if we don't turn that around, then our country is in decline, and irreparably so in many ways. That's going to be probably the biggest challenge you have, right?
Well, we're losing our businesses. We're losing our manufacturing. I won New York, and I won Pennsylvania and Maryland. I won everything. I won every state. You look at Indiana, which was the most recent one. And then the other night, we just had a fantastic night also in Nebraska, in West Virginia. You look at what's happened to West Virginia with the miners, where Hillary Clinton says she wants to put the miners and the mines out of business. And I say just the opposite. We're going to put the miners back to work, and we're going to open up the mines. It is just insane what's going on. She's like a job-killing machine. She is horrible in terms of the economy. Horrible. Don't forget, it was her husband who signed NAFTA, which was probably the greatest, in terms of a disaster, the greatest disaster we've ever had economically for jobs. I went through New York and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Connecticut, all these states. They're like empty. The jobs have been sucked out of us. They've moved to Mexico. China's taken our business. We have to get our country back to work. We don't have any jobs. And I can do it. Believe me, that's what I do best.
Well, every exit poll shows jobs, the economy, are people's top concern. Obviously, this president has accumulated more debt than every other president before him combined. Let me ask you another issue. James Comey, our FBI director, our assistant FBI director, Obama's special envoy to defeat ISIS, General Allen, our director of national intelligence, James Clapper, our Homeland Security chairman, Mike McCall, have all said ISIS will infiltrate the refugee population. You took a strong stand. It was reported today that you said, well, that's only a suggestion, a temporary ban. Explain.
No, I would not allow people to come in from Syria. They're not vetted properly. They're moving in by the thousands. You remember I told you thousands of people are going to pour in? I turned out to be right. Everyone said I was wrong. I was right. Thousands of people are coming in from Syria. We don't know who they are. If you look at the migration, you have a lot of young, strong men. You look at the women. Where are the women and children? You don't have many by comparison. We cannot allow people to come in from Syria. And I would stop it, and I would stop it immediately. We have tens of thousands of people coming into this country. We don't know who they are. There's no paperwork. There's no documentation. Now, with that being said, build safe zones over in Syria, and I'll get the Gulf states to pay for it because our country has no money. We have to rebuild our infrastructure in this country. We have a disaster going on in our country. Our roads, our highways, our bridges, our tunnels, our airports, our hospitals, our everything, our schools. We have a disaster going on. So we're going to rebuild our country. We have to start. We've spent now almost $5 trillion in the Middle East. We can't do this anymore. We have to get back. Now, we have to knock the hell out of ISIS, that I have to say. But we have to get back to rebuilding our country.
We'll take a break. The Washington Post has an army of 20 people that want to look at every single aspect and phase of your life. Also, we'll talk about the polls against Hillary Clinton, the hypothetical, well, what will be the matchup as we continue with Donald Trump right after the break, and also coming up tonight.
We're all on the same page. It was positive. It was cooperative. It had a good spirit in the room.
That was RNC Chairman Reince Priebus talking about today's meeting in Washington with Donald Trump and Paul Ryan. He'll join us with his perspective. Also, Laura Ingraham, Ari Fleischer, and much more. What do Republicans need to do to beat Hillary Clinton in the fall? And then later tonight, the patriarch of Duck Dynasty, Phil Robertson. He was a Ted Cruz supporter. He's now supporting Donald Trump. He'll explain straight ahead. Hannity, as we continue now with 2016 Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, you had the Quinnipiac poll. You're winning by 4 in Ohio. You're dead even in Pennsylvania and Florida. How do you interpret that poll?
Well, I think really good. We have to win Florida. I think I'll win Florida. I won Florida against Marco by a massive number. We had 20% victory. Everybody said, wow, that's incredible. That's a great state for me. And Pennsylvania, we just won massively, as you know, and I think we're going to win that against Hillary easily. She wants to put the miners and steel out of business, essentially. She wants the miners out of business. I think we're going to win Pennsylvania. And Ohio is a great state for me. Ohio is fantastic. I actually did very well in Ohio. We had a great number in Ohio.
And you went up against the popular governor. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did a very good job. If I would have been there for 2 more days, you would have seen. But we did we got a great number in Ohio.
You look at I don't know if you've ever seen years ago, they came out with the war room, how the Clintons fought back in 1992 against George Herbert Walker Bush. Very insightful. Gives you some insight, by the way, into your friend George Stephanopoulos. I don't know if you've seen that, but we know about the Clinton machine. We know they play dirty. We know they'll say and do anything to get elected. Between that and the Washington Post announcing that they have put 20 people to dig into every single phase of your life, are you prepared for what's coming? It's not if it's coming, but when it's coming.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because every hour we're getting calls from reporters from the Washington Post asking ridiculous questions. And I will tell you, this is owned as a toy by Jeff Bezos, who controls Amazon. Amazon is getting away with murder tax-wise. He's using the Washington Post for power so that the politicians in Washington don't tax Amazon like they should be taxed. He's getting absolutely away. He's worried about me, and I think he said that to somebody. It was in some article where he thinks I would go after him for antitrust because he's got a huge antitrust problem because he's controlling so much. Amazon is controlling so much of what they're doing. And what they've done is he bought this paper for practically nothing, and he's using that as a tool for political power against me and against other people. And I'll tell you what, we can't let him get away with it. So he's got about 25. Mm-hmm. I just heard they're taking these really bad stories. I mean, they're wrong. I don't even say bad. They're wrong. And in many cases, they have no proper information, and they're putting them together. They're slopping them together, and they're going to do a book. And the book is going to be all false stuff because the stories are so wrong. And the reporters, I mean, one after another. So what they're doing is he's using that as a political instrument to try and stop antitrust, which he thinks, I believe, he's antitrust. In other words, what he's got is a monopoly. And he wants to make sure I don't get in. So It's one of those things. But I'll tell you what, What he's doing is wrong, and the people are being, the whole system is rigged. You see a case like that, the whole system is rigged.
That's
whether
pretty
it's Hillary
corrupt. I think
or
that's a
whether
good
it's
point.
Bezos.
Yeah, well, you know.
No, he's using. Let me.
Yeah.
He's using the Washington Post, which is peanuts. He's using that for political purposes to save Amazon in terms of taxes and in terms of antitrust.
Wow. Let me ask about Hillary. You commented about her being an enabler. You talked about the abuse of women. And, you know, look, those women, I've interviewed Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, and a lot of other women. And they tell their stories. But more importantly, they tell about how they were smeared and slandered and besmirched when they did tell their stories. I haven't heard you talk a lot about the email server investigation. I haven't heard you talk a lot about the Clinton Foundation. Hillary says she's for women. The foundation took a lot of money from the Saudis, and I've never heard her criticize the Saudis' treatment of women. Is that because they bought her silence?
Well, I talk about the emails all the time. I mean, and what can you say? Does it get any more corrupt or crooked than that? And it looks like she's being protected. Otherwise, how would they let her go down the line this far? And just before she gets this phony nomination, you talk about a rig. I watch this guy, Bernie Sanders. I'm no fan of his, but I watch him win every night, and everybody says he can't win. He wins, he wins, he wins, he can't win because she has these super delegates. So I'm talking about that all the time. The Clinton Foundation obviously is looking to me like it's got some big problems. If you read the book, if you see the movie that's coming out, I mean, the movie that's coming out is brutal from what I understand. So
I actually know all about it, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the emails all the time. Look, people have done like 2% of what she did, and they've destroyed their life over it. And what she's done with the emails is horrible. Now, I hear the man that set it up and set up the server has gone absolutely rogue. So let's see what happens. But I think she's got some big problems with that. I just don't know whether or not they'll prosecute.
Nearly half of Bernie Sanders' West Virginia voters say they will vote for you instead of Hillary. Hillary's warned her donors. Literally, they sent out an email the other night saying even if Bernie runs the table on the remaining states, the corrupt system of superdelegates gives it to Hillary. So she's doing very, very poorly here. I'll give you an example. Back in 2008, when she ran in West Virginia, she had 240,000 votes. She got less than 85,000. What do you make of how she can't close out this nomination on her side?
She's not a closer here. She wasn't a closer last time. She's not a closer with the Chinese for trade deals. She's not going to be a closer with ISIS. She destroyed us. She really hurt us with Libya. That's Benghazi. Not only that, ISIS has the oil now. They've gone and taken the oil. Libya was her baby, and that was a disaster. I mean, what she's done has been a disaster. She's not a closer. You know, the bottom line, whether it's the election or whether it's the election against Obama, you know, in terms of the primaries, she's just not a closer. This is not a woman that should be president. We have so much work to do. I don't think she has the energy to be president. I don't think she can do it. I don't think she can do it. But you see it right now. She cannot close the deal.
If you look at exit polls, in every state, same answer. Republicans feel betrayed by their own party. I think that's playing a very big part in how this election has played out. I guess the question is, there's been two moments, I think, where conservative policies have made America a better place. You talk about Ronald Reagan. I think that was one of the most recent examples. The other would be the contract with America. These promises that you make about the wall, about judges, about Obamacare, balancing the budget, about schools and energy and vets and the military and all these things.
Right.
Would it be a good idea to put it on paper and say to your fellow Republicans, we're going to do these things, sign the paper, promise the American people. They're tired of being lied to. They're tired of being betrayed, and sign it and say, this is my promise if you elect me.
I mean, I'd have no problem doing it. I'm going to do it with the judges because I think it would make people feel better, especially people, you know, certain people within the party that happen to be on the very conservative side. I think it would make them feel better. That's why I'm doing it. But I think everybody knows. First of all, Obamacare, it's gonna fall of its own weight. You know, in 2017 it explodes. It's dead. Okay, it's dead. It is an absolute disaster. Unfortunately, let's say I'm president, I have to inherit this mess, but we hopefully will terminate it before it even explodes. But in 2017, it's a disaster. Well, I'm going to do all these things. I could certainly put it in paper, but we have to do these things. We need the wall. You know, the 16,500 Border Patrol agents just endorsed me. First time they've ever endorsed a presidential candidate. And I went to them and I said, what about the wall? They said, Mr. Trump, we really need the wall. We're going to stop the drugs. We're going to stop the problems. Believe me, Sean.
All right. By the way, I hope in the 5 or 6, you said a couple I may not like. Don't pick that person. Pick the guy that I would like, if you don't mind, on your VP list.
You're going to like.
The one that you pick, I want to like.
I think you're going to be very impressed.
All right.
No, I think you're going to be very impressed. We'll come up with the right final answer, believe me.
All right. Thank you, Donald Trump, the presumptive GOP nominee. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. When we come back,
Thank you,
RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, he's here.